Good morning, good morning, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Ronnie. I am having some issues with my internet. I'm going to ask you to bear with me this morning. I have started just 2 minutes late. Today promises to be extremely exciting, and that's why the devil is trying to change it. It's supposed to be empowering and it's supposed to be enlightening, and that is why there is some glitch and there is some issue. I had to change my device several times to get it going. But here we are, and I say welcome to Leading with Life. We're going to be looking at forgiveness as a leadership tool, and I have the perfect person here with me. She has just written a book on forgiveness. She's an expert on forgiveness, and together we will chart the path. And I'm going to ask her to introduce herself.
Absolutely. Can you hear me okay? Thumbs up.
Yes, we are hearing you.
Very good. Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this morning. I'm excited to be here. I am Ronnie Cyrus Jackson, founder of Authentic Transformations. And what that is it's an organization where I get to walk alongside women in particular. I get to help them along their healing journeys. A lot of what I discuss as a coach, as a writer, author, best-selling author, when I take stages and I am privileged to teach in churches, I talk about forgiveness. And that is exactly what I intend to do this morning with my dear colleague and friend, Dr. Marcia. Thank you. We may have lost Dr. Marcia, but she'll be back, I'm sure.
Good, good, good. Very, very good. And for those who don't know me, thank you for keeping the rain going. For those who don't know me, I am Dr. Marcia Thomas. We do Leading with Light every Tuesday. I am a Christian leadership consultant and Christian empowerment executive life coach. And I'm also an author, as Ronnie says, she is. And we come together to talk about certain parts of leadership that are more inward. So while I focus on the externals, the policies, the standards, the steps, and also the ways that leadership work, I look at the inside, the things that leaders deal with that people do not talk about in books or on the surface. And that is why we are here today with the forgiveness topic. I actually, by request, get into the groove where I use presentations to highlight some of the points we are making. And today is no exception. So we're going to move into the space and then we're going to look at the questions that I pulled so that persons can actually get real answers in real time to their issues. I want to look at those who are coming in, and I want to say welcome, welcome, welcome to those who are coming in. I see you, Simone. You have been such a ardent, and Franklin, I see you. Remember that some persons are joining me on YouTube. We want to highlight those, and those who are coming in through LinkedIn. We also want to appreciate you. All right, so I'm going to move to my slide very quickly, and then I'm going to go to the pointers that we will be looking at. And so the first thing that we want to look at is some statistics. And there are some statistics out there that says that practicing forgiveness can reduce stress and anxiety by 50%. That's a huge margin. Forgiveness is very important. And then we also want to look at John Hopkins Medicine and Harvard Health. And we also want to look at the the APA, the American Nursing Manual. And we also want to look at Mayo Clinic. All of them have come together to say that forgiveness, based on their research, can lead to lower stress levels, improve mental health, and stronger immune system. So that's very important for leaders to know, because sometimes we hang on to things. No one is exceptional. We all need forgiveness. And we need to forgive, God says, because he has forgiven us, because we have been forgiven. We must practice, especially Christian leaders we must practice forgiveness. So what if the key to stronger leadership isn't more control, but more compassion? That is something I want you to think about. Why leadership matters? Why does leadership matter? Let's talk about forgiveness. Why does forgiveness matter in leadership? It matters because it clouds your judgment and it erodes trust. It leads to burnout, and it diminishes your influence and your meaningful connection with those who you find it difficult to forgive. If you find it difficult to forgive yourself, let me add that in, you are not going at your A game. You're not moving at your best. And you allow doubt to take residence in you, and you allow dismay and distractions to fortify your spirit in your body. And so, if you're not forgiving, then you do not have the bandwidth for creativity and clarity because you are not free. And you're not able, if you to restore team and rebuild your culture, because nobody trusts you. Everybody fears you. They don't know what you might be doing. And so we want to look at the steps to forgiveness, but we want to do that at the last point. So I want to bring in my guests here at this time to answer, as we strive to answer in the hour that we have, or the 45 minutes, sorry, the questions about leadership. So we want to look at faith, we want to look at forgiveness, we want to look at leadership. So the first question that I'm putting to my guests is, what is the role of forgiveness in workplace conflict resolution? And how can a leader incorporate it into organizational processes?
That's a fantastic question to start with. Let me tell you this. The role of forgiveness in workplace conflict resolution is, in my opinion, the foundation before anything else can be built upon it. And what I mean by that is, when you're thinking about forgiveness, forgiveness is generally towards another person, whether it is towards yourself or towards another person. And in any organization, it's required that teamwork happens. And so if we are holding an offense or holding an ought or holding a grudge against another team member, that prevents the work from moving forward. It eliminates or it decreases the productivity that can happen within the work day, within the work cycle, and quite frankly, it decreases morale within that organization. And so the role of forgiveness in conflict resolution should be the goal. Now, we will talk about this later, but I want to throw out there before I lose the audience is that forgiveness and reconciliation is not the same.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the
I
same.
want you to dig into that a little. Because that is one of the movements of my next question. This was a part. What is different between reconciliation and forgiveness? Very good.
Yes, yes, yes. So forgiveness is saying to yourself, you know what? I am going to move forward. I am going to feel what I feel. I am going to face the facts of the situation that happened. I am going to own my part in the situation and the decreased level of relationship that happened, the breakdown that happened, and I am going to move forward. Forgiveness is taking ownership and accepting accountability for the situation or the occurrence or the offense that happened. Now, one thing we need to remember is that forgiveness is a choice. We get to choose to forgive. And I want to repeat that. We get to choose to forgive. And when I say we get to choose, forgiveness is actually a gift. It's a
Yes.
gift that frees us up from carrying the load of offense. Now, let's contrast that against reconciliation. Reconciliation is when you think about reconciling or reconnecting to another person. Reconciliation is outside of us, while forgiveness is internal to us. And so that's why I say forgiveness is internal, or forgiveness and reconciliation are not one and the same.
Very much so. And it's very important that we put that demarcation, because there are some persons who reconcile with persons in their workplace, meaning they have a relationship with them because it's a working relationship. But Christian leaders are to avoid having a working relationship. You must confront the issue and you must deal with the issue because, as I said, forgiveness is for the brave. It's not for the weak of heart because it requires something much deeper than what is on the outside. And so forgiveness being on the outside leads to reconciliation, but forgiveness is not reconciliation. So let's look at the side of it that I focus on, and that is how we incorporate organizational processes, forgiveness into organizational processes. Thank you for joining Dr. Leslie and Lisa. Great. Please share the link so others can join. Thank you for joining. Mary, thank you for joining. Stacey Ann, I see you clearly. Simone, I see you. Paula, I see you. Thank you for joining. And so we want to look at how we do that. How do we incorporate it into organizational processes? We want to have an open door policy as a leader where persons feel safe to share their hurts and their pains and their struggles. We want to also actively listen to people. If someone says to you, you have hurt them, even if you believe that you have not, you need to have that space where you ask them to explain it through their eyes, how they are feeling and how they are responding to the great and grand things that you're doing in your organization and why they are responding that way. And then there is some point where you can now have a bridge where instead of a wall, where persons can come to you. Do not carry a spirit of not wanting to be criticized, this spirit of resistance, this spirit of feeling that you're being attacked and that you're being undermined. Carry an open mind so that when persons speak to you, you are able to diffuse conflict and hurt and pain, and they recognize that you're human. The third thing that I would say to you is that you to have the organizational process embedded. Encourage persons to listen before they speak. Encourage persons to clarify. So have a system where people deal with facts and not emotions, and be very transparent in policies and how persons are dealt with, how you mete out justice and the scarce spoils and benefit, how you do your promotion, and also how you do your demotion, how you exclude. Make those policies as caring and loving as possible, because it is not always possible to be at peace with all men. But when it is very transparent, when you practice compassion and empathy, when you give persons the benefit of the doubt, when those systems are in place for support and care, then persons, it minimizes the incidences that would engender an unforgiving spirit. So let's go with the second one. What are the consequences of not addressing past conflicts and grievances in the workplace? Good morning,
Wow.
Adela.
Absolutely. Well, there's many consequences when we don't address, especially when it's known and when it's openly aired, when there's multiple people impacted by the offense, by the unforgiveness. It's like a parasite to your environment, if you will. It's like the Bible teaches us even a little bit of yeast ruins the whole batch. And that's like unforgiveness. And so, what are the consequences? Decreased morale, mental anguish and stress. I mean, trust is eroded very quickly, and communication is awful. I've been a part of in environments like this before, so I'm speaking not only from experience but also from the research as well. Another consequence that we don't think about often is the consequence to our stakeholders, those who we have been sent to that job to serve. They're not getting the very best of you when you're navigating landmines in the background. And so, understanding that when we harbor unforgiveness, especially intentionally, when we harbor that, we are not showing up are at 100% because we're constantly navigating a psychological warfare internally but at the same time, we're smiling on the outside. So we're not being authentic when we show up to those spaces. I
Yes.
can go on, but I want to pause here.
And that I call that a double-minded mindset, which is
Yes.
very dangerous for the individual in the organization. And I also wrote a article about the silent critic, the person who is smiling but very angry, very disgruntled, very disconnected, disillusioned, that person becomes a silent critic. So the person pretends to be with you, carrying out your programs, is one of your greatest fanfare and cheerleaders. But behind you, in the informal setting, they become the eroder of trust. They plant things in the mind of others because they carry feuds, they carry displacement. They always want others to share with others how unfair and unjust they have been treated. Of course, they don't go to the person in the organization that they feel is the instigator, the person who triggers them. They tell everyone else, and they create this division. And this is a part of it I want to look at too, because depending on the influence, because the informal structure of any institution is greater and carry greater weight to destroy the organization than the formal structure. And in that informal structure, the reason why it is so detrimental to the organization is that persons automatically choose this person as a leader because they feel this person has the strongest voice, the strongest influence and impact and connection to change things for them outside of the present leadership. And so when that person has an unforgiving spirit, it is sheared. It is like a poisonous aroma that insidiously finds itself and plant discord in the heart of team members. And so there are so many cobwebs that develop because the cobwebs develop because persons pretend to be who they are not. And so what it does is create a toxic workplace where people constantly have to be looking over their shoulders, including the leader, because you always want to be one up. It also creates in that organization either the spirit of low morale or lack of productivity. But if you look at the other side of it, it can also engender very, very harmful competition because persons seek to destroy you at every point, to be one upon you, to teach you a lesson when there is no forgiveness. And that's very important to understand in an organization. So we want to move to the next question. I see your comment, Dr. Leslie. I see it. The minute we take 100% responsibility for our part signals forgiving ourselves. That type of forgiveness. Can we forgive others if we can't forgive ourselves? We are coming
Mm.
to that. We are coming to that in the next set of questions. And you are correct. Persons who are unforgiven are run by their fears. So here is your answer. We're going to talk about it now, Dr. Leslie. Is it possible to forgive others if we can't forgive ourselves? And the next question I want to ask my guests, and of course, you see on the screen that there's a mask because if it is not brought out, as Ronnie says, and you smile with the person, it festers and grows and it destroys you first because you become someone that you cannot recognize because of your bitterness, the revengeful spirit, the vindictiveness, and those types of traits that you engender that comes with an unforgiving spirit consciously, unconsciously, and by default. That visible enemy, that invisible enemy that you cannot hold on to because you are justifying why you are not going to forgive. And the justification becomes your number one killer. So, why do I struggle to forgive myself for past mistakes in my life and leadership?
That's a great question, and I generally start here in coaching after orientation and all of that. But I go by a framework. It's the 4 R's. It's not a a framework that I have created, but I definitely use it. And those 4 R's, when you're thinking about forgiveness towards self, they are responsibility, remorse, restoration, and renewal. Okay. And then, in my opinion, the reason why we struggle when we're forgiving ourselves is because we've skipped addressing one of those 4 R's. Let me read those again. They are responsibility, taking accountability, acknowledging that something is wrong. So being honest that there is an issue, there's a thing, something's gone wrong. We have to we have to own that. And then having remorse. A lot of times when we find ourselves in difficulty with forgiving ourselves is because there's guilt and there's shame attached to that. Sometimes it's even that, oh, I tried to do it and I couldn't get it right. So understanding that maybe we lacked something and it didn't turn out the way. Either way, we have to find ourselves and make space to have remorse for ourselves in the situation. And that doesn't come naturally. It creates a situation where we have to be vulnerable with ourselves. And sometimes we can be vulnerable with others, but when we give that same grace and that same space to ourselves, it's funny, but sometimes we don't have the capacity to do that. That's a learned skill. The other R is restoration, making the choice and making the decision in our minds to move forward, not to continue to re-traumatize ourselves and to rehearse the thing and to think about all the ways we're going to get revenge. We have to make the choice to become restored within ourselves so that we can move forward. And then renewal is, what does it look like to move forward? How does the boundary lines need to be reset? What do I need in order to do different, not better, to do different? And then what community do I need around me that will help hold me accountable? I think that's why we struggle, because we miss one of the steps in those 4 R's when it comes to forgiving ourselves.
Very much so. I'm trying to post them in the
Yeah.
group
Yeah.
so
So
that
it's
persons have it. So we are talking
responsibility
about the response. We're talking about the responsibility. We're talking about the remorse. We're talking about the renewal
and
and so
restoration.
and the restoration. Very
Mhm.
good. So that's very important for those who are listening. Is something that we need to focus on as we move. So let me see if I can get that posted and then I can show it on the screen. All right. So the next question is that how can I lead others to forgiveness when I am still hurting? Because we are not saying that persons find it very easy to forgive and that you are not hurt. We don't want to diminish, because some persons are extremely cruel and they go for your throat, and if you survive it, it can become a serious hang up. You can be left with trauma. You can be left with anxiety disorders. You can be left with paranoia. All sorts of things can happen depending on the level of hurt, pain, trauma, betrayal, or overwhelming factors that come upon you from persons who you least expect, and from mistakes and choices that you make. So how can I lead others in forgiveness when I am still hurting? And there are many leaders who are hurting. They are hurting silently because they are expected to be strong, have all the answers, and have it all together. And there are many that have many hurts and pains, and many who feel undervalued or very much overlooked in their organizations, because no matter what they do, some persons just cannot be satisfied. And there are some supervisors who keep beating them down because of fear, Dr. Leslie, because of envy, because they themselves have been beaten down, and they get into a position, they did not clear the baggage, they carry the trauma, and they deliver it just as they got it, or even in with greater intensity. So let's hear, how can I know lead others in forgiveness when I am still hurting?
Well, I want to make sure that we heard each other clearly when we started. And for those who have joined since, we have to all understand that forgiveness is a choice, okay? And because it is a personal decision for each and every person, it is like having an expectation to give you something that I don't have.
Mhm.
And so it is difficult to lead others into forgiveness when you are still hurting, though not impossible. I want to make sure we're clear that two things can coexist at the same time. And so, yes, you can lead others into forgiveness while you're still hurting. However, it's more difficult. And so, what I would say to this is how the how portion is you take your time. Understanding that forgiveness is a process. It's not automatic. It's not something, a pill that you can take to just, there's no app for that. It is really an internal review that you have to do of your within inside yourself. But when you're thinking about leading others into forgiveness while you're still hurting, the facts is where you will have success. And so what do I mean? Focusing on the facts instead of the emotions about a thing. Focusing on the facts instead of on the person when you are trying to move people and help people and lead people into forgiving another thing. And how do you do that? You listen without bias. You ask for basis of a thing. So if someone comes and says, hey, I've been offended, I'm holding unforgiveness, you'll probably never hear someone admit they're holding unforgiveness. But if you know that there's a situation, you need to ask, what are the facts? Tell me what this is based on. And that way, when we can really put our teeth into the facts of a thing, it removes the emotion and it helps us to rightly align what mistake happened so that we can all move forward. Another big thing, Dr. Marcia, I will say is, again, we have to allow people space to feel what they feel,
Mhm.
to face what they face. And that is a part in America, in the world, I would say, is that we don't do enough. We don't do a good job at giving people space. We want to hurry up and move past the thing, but that is dangerous when we're talking about restoring someone's soul.
Yeah, very much so. I see some persons have joined, and there's an Oik. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Thank you so much for taking the time to join. And you have reiterated what we are saying. Forgiveness is a choice. And one of the things that, out of the many important points you have raised there in relation to forgiving yourself, or leading persons to forgive when you're hurting, is that you also have to accept what you cannot change. A lot of times we want we don't want to forgive persons, but we expect persons to forgive us when we hurt them. And that is a very important point that I want to make also, because forgiveness is a two-way street. You can't expect to be forgiven by God or others in the future that you might hurt if you do not forgive. There is something that is carried on an unforgiving spirit, and I think it's a demonic force that propels you into situations that you don't realize because you have carried this unforgiveness. It becomes so deep in you that you start to not to forgive people for the simplest of things. And some persons might feel that they have a reason not to forgive, but and you might, based on your hurt, can't get past it. It's just that it's not unforgiveness. It's just that you can't get past it because of your immense fear and the anxiety that you have every time you come to what really happened to you. But it is not impossible, which is what she's saying. One of the ways that I find in my experience and as I speak to my clients is finding a way to accept what cannot be changed. People, you cannot guarantee person's response, but you can guarantee, you can dictate, you can choose how you react. And that is a powerful mind game that is played by many persons in relation to unforgiveness. You can't expect that you would be drinking poison and the other person would die. Unforgiveness affects those who are not forgiving more than those who you are not choosing to forgive, because they many times go on their merry way, especially if they don't know that you have this up in your heart for them. And so you want to make sure that you clear your spirit, you clear your spirit, so you are not able to add value to yourself. You are not able to, you want to clear your spirit that you are able, sorry, to add value to yourself, that you are able to pray. Because here the thing, your future life is more important than your present. And if you don't forgive men their trespasses, This is a promise that you have been given. This is the contract. Your heavenly Father will not forgive you, no matter how justified they are, because it can't be more justified than killing a man who says on the very cross that he was crucified, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And he says, no, if you are my disciple, you will follow me. You will abide in me. You will do what I'm saying. So I am pressing it in that way, especially for Christian leaders, because life and leadership cannot be separated. And so, as a Christian becoming a leader, you have a greater mandate because of your scope of influence to ensure that you lead from an authentic place, and you know in whom you have believed, the faith that is out there, and you understand the purpose in your pain, because it doesn't just happen. It is established for your grooming, for your preparation, for your preservation, and for your eternal reward. And you want to understand that. So the next question is, Ronnie, how, and this is a very important question that grapples many leaders, and they ask me to make sure I ask this one. How can I forgive myself for leadership mistakes and move forward in a way that builds trust with my team? How can I
Abs-
forgive myself for leadership mistakes and move forward in a way that builds trust with my team?
Absolutely, that is a great question, Dr. Marcia. I think I'll lead that question. You've rolled into this one beautifully. Acceptance. Acceptance is not agreement. And I think sometimes we have to understand that just because we accept the things we cannot change, that is not making a vow to, or making a commitment to agree with the thing. No, 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 no. Acceptance. And so when you're asking this question, you have to accept what you cannot change when we're thinking about moving forward. And I think that's having a solution mindset, or a forward thinking mindset,
Mhm.
also has to be a common denominator in when we're thinking about leading ourselves and leading others forward. When we think about a servant leader, which is what I definitely subscribe to, and I know you do as well, Dr.
Mhm.
Marcia, we understand that we have an assignment. And so that the leadership responsibilities that we have, it's not about us. It's about the person who we have been assigned to lead and move and help them move forward. And so when we're thinking about holding offense or holding unforgiveness in our hearts, again, I said earlier, we are not bringing our best selves to the table because we are
Mhm.
preoccupied in our minds and in our hearts that we can't fully show up and give the gifts that we've been giving to that person or to that environment.
Very much so. Very much so. I have some comments on my phone that I want to
Yes.
read. Your
Yes.
ladies are taking it very deep. This is enlightening, very insightful, and very beneficial. There's someone else who is saying, I want these questions to be answered if you really have the time. I'm so sorry, but we can't, because we took a toll, a poll, and these are the questions that came in. So I'm very sorry about that. We maybe will have to look at it sometime next week. And so I hope the person is hearing us. We may have to look at it at another time, and so on. Next week, I wanted to look at the lifespan of emotions, and I wanted to bring in Dr. Leslie on that, because emotions are very powerful in relation to hurt and in loss. And I wanted to really look at how long, and I wanted to look at the lifespan of emotions with Dr. Leslie. And so I don't know if we can tuck in some of them, but we want to continue. How do I forgive someone on my team who has hurt me deeply is the next question.
Yes, you have to make a choice. Let me preference this by saying, and I preference all my forgiveness work by saying this: forgiveness is a lifestyle. And I think that, especially as Christians, when we chose to accept Jesus as our Savior, we chose that we would live a lifestyle of forgiveness. That is
Mhm.
following Christ. That's what he teaches us. And so when we think about forgiveness as a lifestyle, making that choice to like you've preset yourself to make that choice to forgive. And so when you think about someone on your team who has hurt you deeply, understand that people are people. We're all flawed. You are flawed. I am flawed. We are all flawed. And so, with that understanding the motivation of our hearts, is not so that we can continue to have gain in this world, but so that we
Mm,
can give and leave a legacy in this world. And so, how? The question is, how do you forgive someone? You make the choice to forgive, but then you take your time in that forgiveness. Sometimes you need to reset the boundaries of that relationship. Consequences need to be had depending on the severity of the situation, making sure that you hold a person accountable for the part that they played in that situation. And then understanding that we have to give a person another chance. Now,
mm,
giving person another chance is definitely done with strategy, but it's also done with wisdom. And
mm,
so I think that that strategy piece of what does it look like for me to gain this person's trust again, that is the part where we have to do work as leaders. Because sometimes when, let's face it, I'm guilty too, when we have been offended by a person, we write them off altogether. And Christ didn't do us that way. He gave us an opportunity to be reconciled back to him. And in the workplace, perhaps it's not a reconciliation back to our person for a personal relationship, but we have to have a willingness to reconcile the person back into the environment and back into the work flow of the system. And so if they were hired to do the job, we have to give them space and opportunity to bring their giftedness back into the job and not write them off. I'll
very
pause
much
there. I
so.
can keep going.
Very much so. And what I love about it is that you are focusing on yourself. When somebody hurts you deeply, understand yourself, understand how it triggered you, look into why it triggered you, be and that points to your self awareness and your emotional intelligence, because if the person is not fired, then you will have to find a way to deal with the seeing the person every day. And some persons, because they were not excluded from the organization, tend to gloat because of immaturity and also because of a lack of empathy. And many of these persons are narcissistic in nature, and life has many of them. They seem to be multiplying in organizations. So you must expect that you will hurt people and people will hurt you. When you're hurt deeply, you want to make sure, especially in an organization, that you remain very calm and very responsive and not reactive. So you want to look at the facts. You want to take the facts. The reality is, and I can't absorb that reality, is that some persons, even when the blind can see the facts, they can't see it because they shut their mind out. You have to make sure that you treat those persons with love and respect as you move forward, but you must set boundaries so that their toxicity does not pull over to you, because you can actually allow them to dig into you by giving them open access to you. And so I want to make that clear, that when they are forgiven, they must be truly forgiven. I understand that this is you, this is your personality, you can't change, you actually need help. Some persons are actually delusional in their revenge and avenge spirit. You want to understand where they are. And guess what? If you find that it is putting an influence on your organization that will affect morale and that will also decrease productivity and the happiness and joy and freedom and peace that people are to have at their work, it must be referred to someone that is objective enough to see it as it is. And sometimes that goes a very long way. They can also be referred to persons for help, because sometimes when you dig down into it and look at it through the eyes of love and maturity, with empathy and compassion, you find that there are greater issues that the person is grappling with, that the person needs help. And here you are, given the perfect opportunity because you were deeply hurt, to look a little deeper and below the surface and help this person. I have seen it happen in organizations and persons come back to thank you. I have seen persons being excluded from organizations because of the way they hurt other people, and they actually tell you how much they have grown and how they have been given new eyes, because where they are going, where they went to dear Pinina, somebody who became them, and they becoming you. And I find that maturity doesn't walk with age. For those who think and are saying that person should know better, age age sometimes walk alone. You know, I had a situation where somebody hurt me in my organization, felt that I had it in for them. They were not coming to work on time. They were not showing up with the tools for the job, and they were shortchanging persons. They were fixing grades and so on. And I had to take a hard ball. And that person made an attempt to destroy my reputation and my character because they knew the persons that I was answerable to. And that person ended up leaving my organization by the very persons who they would have thought would have agreed with them because of their family connections and church connections and so on. And that person left my organization, went into an organization, had somebody trying to destroy her character. And who do you think she asked for a recommendation?
Mm.
She asked me, I want to throw it out to the audience. What would you have done? I wrote the good parts of her in that recommendation and I gave it to her. When she received it, she cried. She said, Miss, I really and truly did not expect you to write a recommendation and to write these things. And I asked her, are you a person that will work with a team? She says yes, because she does well working with teams, but to work alone, that's what is her downfall. She has good ideas, but she cannot implement them. So I write that it is somebody that has good ideas and in the right environment and with the right support network, she will be able to do great things. I did not tell any lies. I just found the good parts of her. And sometimes that is how we are to look at it in our organizations. Nicholas says, I have realized that nothing works well until we apply intentionality. Very much so. And that's what Ronnie and are saying. It's a choice. You must choose. And once we are intentional, we can forgive better. Yeah, we can just forgive. There is no better. We can just forgive, Nicholas. We can forgive. Once we are intentional, we can forgive. More so, forgiveness is to me, not to the other person. So why hold back on something that frees me and goes to my benefit? All right. Mike is saying forgiveness is to release you from the negative energy drain. And forgiveness and reconciliation aren't the same thing. We dealt with that as the first key. We made sure we looked at that, Mike. So when you do the replay, you will hear clearly what we say about that. Okay, the minutes are coming up on us. So I want to move to the next question. And we're doing well, Ronnie, in answering these questions. So I want to move to the next question. And so let's hear what the next questions are. And I think this is just the ones before. And so the next set of questions that I have been asked to look at, it's really what does forgiveness look like for a leader when the person who hurts me deeply doesn't apologize or change their behavior? Wow.
Yeah, this is a great question, and I want to make sure that we're all hearing the same thing, is that forgiveness is for ourselves first.
Mhm.
It's for ourselves first because internally, if our internal system is off, we are unable to externally perform well. And so, when we're thinking about what does forgiveness look like for a leader when the person who has hurt deeply doesn't apologize? Understand you don't. Forgiveness doesn't require an apology from another person. Why? Because you can't control when that apology comes, if ever.
Mm.
But what you can control is like our listener, dear friend, said, is that your intent. What is your motivation as far as what you're bringing to the workplace? Making sure your intention is well, and making sure your motivation is to help the organization, one, but also to love each other next. And so when you think about what does forgiveness look like, it's the same. Understanding why you're forgiving, what you're forgiving. If there needs to be a set of consequences that is had, make sure those consequences are evaluated fairly, equitably, and make sure that there's a level of accountability afterwards. Of course, restructuring the boundary line might
Mm.
need to take place. Sometimes that includes a redistribution of duties. Maybe something happened that person was unable to handle the level of responsibility that they were given, and we need to backtrack that. And so sometimes I don't know if that's a demotion. I don't know if that is reassigning work duties, reassigning workstations, reassigning a team that a person was on. The point is, resetting boundaries is absolutely a solution that can rearrange the whole dynamic of a team once offense has been had against another team member.
Yes. And I want to add here, and I know what it might seem odd to you, but the first thing I want you to do so you can represent forgiveness very well is that you need to go to the doctor and help them confirm that nothing is wrong with you. The aches, the pains, the headaches you're having, the migraines, the desire, the depression, and so is because this is what needs to happen. You need to forgive that person, even if the person does not change his or her behavior. And then if it is in, because Ronnie made a good point about redeploying the person and actually delegating certain responsibilities, but sometimes it's not in your power. So if it is in your power, you want to objectively protect the person from him or herself, because a narcissist is very likely to be the person in your workplace that will not apologize or change their behavior because they don't see anything wrong with their behavior, because their mental capacity is usually altered to see themselves alone and what serves them. And they are always contending with individuals or issues that do not exist in the way they have it framed in their reality. And so it is almost an impossible task to get that person to come around. I hope I'm speaking to a leader this morning that is burning out yourself, trying to be right and trying to serve this person and trying to make peace and trying to get the person to see things from your point of view and to accept the facts. That is very likely not going to happen even when Jesus comes. I want to make that very clear because it is a choice that the person has made, and the person has fortified certain tendencies, habits, routines, feelings, and mindset deeply into their spirit, and it begins to control them. So they see issues where they are not. I'm speaking to someone this morning that has that persistent issue in your workplace, and it is driving you crazy. You are very sick, you have aches and pains and so on, but when you go to the doctor they tell you that it's not so. Believe me when I tell you, because I've experienced it with a narcissistic person who moved on to another institution, and it keeps moving because everybody else has a problem except her, so she keeps moving. And I want you to understand that they are very convincing. They can convince persons so that persons take their side and you look like you're always the avenger. So you want to accept that part of it, and you want to make sure that you delegate the responsibilities that the person wants or is fighting for, or what is the treasure that the person feel that you have that they would need, and you want to do it responsible, and you want to make sure responsibly, sorry, and you want to make sure that the person's expertise and knowledge match the position that you're now putting the person in, the desired position or so on. That will not guarantee peace, but it will make sure it will guarantee control.
Yes.
And that's what you want to do, take back the control. And so it will give you that space to breathe. It will also be that you will have to understand that at some point you have to exclude persons who are spoilers. You have to exchange them, you have to exclude them. So you gradually create a system where the person becomes so discontented that they desire to leave. And you want to do it very humanely, you want to do it very lovingly. So there are certain conditions that the person will lay down that in legal forms you cannot match. And under other circumstances, if the person was an asset, you would have negotiated with those who can make the change, but you don't, because it will not add value to the organization, and it will not help team members who are not coming to work, not because they cannot do it or they don't want to, because they want some peace. So they take leaves very often because of this person. And so what you want to do is you want to meet those conditions that can be met, and you want to say calmly, I cannot meet these conditions for these reasons. So the person, in fact, will leave your organization. So that's one of the ways to help. You want to take back your control, and you want to be yourself. You want to be humble. You want to be very objective and transparent, and you want to be really just when you're dealing with that person. And that takes me to the next question. How do I balance forgiveness with justice and successfully and accountability in my leadership? How do I
Yes.
balance forgiveness with justice and accountability in my organization or leadership?
Yes. And so what I would say to this question, and I don't think this is anything that's, spectacular or an eye opener, but it's something that we must be more intentional about, is focusing on solution, being solution oriented, not blaming. So when we are solution focused, one thing that we know is that we focus on the facts. And so, especially when emotions become high, sometimes we start focusing on the wrong thing. So, when you're thinking about balancing forgiveness with justice and accountability, let's focus on the facts towards a solution. The other thing is, let's focus on the fact that maybe there is something valid in why the person is upset. Maybe we need to train. Let's focus on training. Where there's training opportunities for this person so that we can all move forward together. Another thing is, don't avoid communication. In
Mhm.
fact, when we are in conflict, communication should be higher, in my opinion. And higher, of course, productively, but higher with intent. So,
Mm.
making sure that you're intentional about making and creating spaces so that people can be heard, people can be seen, people can be validated in whatever they're experiencing. Sometimes we can, oftentimes actually, we can go through the same exact experience, but have two different experiences, yet we shared the same experience.
Mhm.
Did you all follow that? And so,
Yes.
yeah, making sure that we are creating and facilitating open communication, and then also I mentioned on this before, but making sure that we are implementing restorative processes. We can't, just because someone has a downfall or there's a conflict, we can't write a person off. We don't get to do that. What does it look like to restore them gently, to give them opportunities to earn trust again? And then really when we say let it go, like really in real life, let it go. Let it go. And so that's what I would offer to this situation or to
Very
this
much so.
question.
Very much so. And I just want to add resilience and consciousness. Be very resilient and conscious. Resilience is needed for justice, because sometimes justice doesn't look like fairness. Justice looks like forgiveness. It looks like compassion. It looks like empathy. That is justice. It looks like mercy. It looks like understanding. So we want to be resilient in making sure that our faith remains looking up, that we are able to endure and look beyond the surface to see what Ronnie has said is the real issue. So we don't take down the cobwebs, we kill the spider. You know, the funny thing about life is that none of us learn to swim on land. We have to go into the water. And sometimes our purpose is established because we are taken on a road where we have to forgive and we have to love, who some people call the unlovable. I put it in quotes. Some people don't like that. So the accountability is that persons must understand what they are doing. We must show people what we are doing. We are not to ignore what persons are doing, and we are not to always accommodate people to be who they want to be, because sometimes who they want to be are not who they should be. And we sometimes avoid, as Ronnie says, dealing with the issue, confronting the issue, and we make it fester and grow, and we give people more power and authority because they are getting away. And so mercy must be metered very much with decisive action. The action must be that you show mercy to them, so you protect them from themselves, and you show mercy to the others on the team who are suffering the onslaughts of this individual. And you must make sure that you record and you have the facts, and you show persons through memos, through reminders, through gentle nudges, and so on, what they are doing and the pattern and the theme that they're establishing. So they understand that this is a persistent problem. It's not a one-off thing. So the record keeping is very important. The evaluation is very important. The sustaining of evidence is very important, but how you use it now must be that you use it to heal and not hinder these persons, and you actually use it to transform these persons who need to see things differently or to change their behavior. You also want to use record keeping for delegation, because sometimes people become very, very unforgiving because you are rewarding them with a gift. You're taking them out, you're giving them a trophy and a certificate for their excellent job and how they carry out their roles and responsibilities, but all they want is more responsibility. They wouldn't mind if you don't take them to any hotel and give them any awards. They want responsibility. There are some persons who don't want more responsibility. They just want to be rewarded monetarily for where they are. So they would want an increase in salary and nothing else. They are content to be where they are. You must understand motivations too, because some persons do not forgive you because you are have a misunderstanding of what motivates them. And everybody seems to have this idea that money motivates them and time off motivate them. And some persons want more work because of what they're doing or contending with. This is how they get to take the mind off the loss of their son, or maneuver their divorce, or deal with the fact that they have to go home to a toxic relationship and that they can't get out of. And many times it's the work, but you keep rewarding them with trophies and they are suffering silently and they don't know how to tell you, but you see that their demeanor that's not so great. They are very sensitive and highly strong. When persons are very sensitive and highly strong, you want to pay attention in your organization. You want to pay keen attention. All right, we see you there, Mike. As we become closer to Christ, the need to hold on to unforgiveness is released as a natural consequence more often than not. As Christians, we also can't expect non-Christians to act Christ-like at all times, because some persons are moral, even though they are not Christians, and they are very ethical. They are just not Christians. And I am finding, Mike, as hard as it may sound now, that many Christians are more contentious. More Christians are more contentious in their organizations than non-Christians. They are the ones who have an issue with everything. It's sad to say, but it's something that I might have to look on here. Why it is that we contribute to so much toxicity in the workplace, because that is a research that has been proven that many Christians contribute to toxicity in their workplace and they are the most unforgiving. I'm really sorry to put that in, but you have a solid point, because those of us who consciously are accountable to our maker, we make that effort to live right and justly and fairly and in our innermost souls to be honest and true and to stand for truth though the heavens fall. And we cannot be bought or sold. That is very important. And so unforgiveness is released as a natural consequence because we understand our purpose. We understand why we are in that role and we understand our responsibility. What doesn't it sounds simple, but doesn't some of us hurt come from unrealistic expectations more times than not? And that's what I'm saying. There are many Christians who expect persons to embrace their faith and understand why they can't do this and why they can't do that instead of negotiating. So we want to make that clear. All right. We see Leslie with a question that we might have to answer and move because we are right on time. And she's saying, there's a question that she has. I have to maybe go back up there, but she's talking about fear being a cult. Let me see if I can find the question. Let me see if I find it. So she's asking us to answer. We are in a cult, so to speak, with our fears. What do you think? Does our fears contribute to unforgiveness? Maybe that's what she's asking.
Yeah, so I'll happily answer this. Yes. As Christians, what we know is that God doesn't give us the spirit a fear. I think that sometimes we misconstrue the true nature and dominion and power that we have as a Christian, and we do succumb to fear. Now let me tell you that fear is a very human emotion as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is very normal sometimes that we find ourselves in fear. However, staying stuck in fear is not the call that we have upon our lives. And
Mm.
we have resource and power to get ourselves up out of that fear. One thing that I would even offer is I would ask myself, if I find, which I have, find myself stuck in a pattern of fear, I would ask myself, is there some underlying unforgiveness that I haven't dealt with concerning this situation? Again, I want to preference this by saying I'm answering the question based on a workplace environment, based on us being leaders in a workplace.
Yes.
And so I would ask myself, if there's a level of fear that you're experiencing that's causing you anxiety, that's causing your heart to double beat, that's causing you to be off course and your mind to be distracted, ask yourself firstly, is there some level of unforgiveness or unpure motive that I have not dealt with?
Yeah.
That's where I would start with that.
Yeah,
And
man.
then allow yourself the space to deal with that. And sometimes I will just put this out there, Dr. Marcia. Sometimes we have to deal with our issues in a multitude of counselors, meaning it's okay to go to therapy. It's okay to get outside counsel when we have encountered a situation or a season of life where we're struggling. That doesn't, when we find ourselves in that space, it doesn't give us the right to become unhinged on other
Mm-hmm.
people.
Yeah. Very much so. And I don't need to add anything to that because fear in itself can make us unforgiving.
Yeah.
And fear, it's a trap. The fear can trap
Yes.
us into resentment. And fear, as you say, is very valid. And when you feel helpless, and that's why I help ladies who feel helpless in their workplace. Because when you feel helpless, the fear that comes from that of not being able to change your circumstances, change your life, or change your outcome can make you become very resentful and make you also hate yourself. You don't forgive yourself because you felt that you had choices and you gave up the choices so that you could be close to your husband, or you gave up your opportunities so that you could be stable for your children, and now you're not able to forgive yourself. Those are reality checks that leaders have, and that's not talked about, that I talk about. And I talk about it because it's realistic. And if you don't have a support network when you feel helpless or uncertain, then or has emotional exhaustion that pushes you to not forgive yourself or others, or to be so high strung and sensitive that you hold on to petty things that people you would normally not hold on to if you were more in control of yourself, if there was more clarity, if there was more understanding for your purpose. So I want to end by saying, what are 3 basic steps that you would suggest for persons to forgive?
Yes, my 3 basic steps, and you can find it in my latest book. It's called F That, When Forgiveness Unlocks the Life You Truly Desire. I'll leave the link in the LinkedIn comments. But my 3 basic steps that I would suggest when thinking about forgiveness is face it, feel it, and then choose to let it go. And whatever your said it is, it's the offense. That's what I'm talking about. Face the offense that you're dealing with. Feel the offense that it is. Allow those emotions to happen. You don't have to fake it and shake it and fake it till you make it. You don't have to do that. God does not ever call us to do that. That cliche is from hell, and I don't believe in it and I don't subscribe to it. God calls us to worship Him in spirit and in truth at all times. And so then I would say you have to make the choice to let it go and move forward. That would be
Good.
my 3 steps.
Very much so. And I took it from your book. I took it from a book. By the way, it's a very good book. I want her to talk about it just before we end. But I looked at it, and for those who want to have it ratified, I place it on the screen. Acknowledge the pain. Leadership does not expect you to just have wounds. All right. So you want to put those wounds aside. You want to release the offense. Forgiveness is a decision, as is highlighted in her book. It's not a feeling. And then you want to lead from your healing. So you want to share your lessons, not your bitterness. That is a powerful, those are powerful steps that are in her book. I want her to talk about her book for just a moment as we close.
Absolutely. So, my book, thank you, Dr. Marcia. My book is called, again, F That. The F is for forgive. Forgive that. Unlocking, when forgiveness unlocks the life you truly desire. It's a thin book because it's a heavy book. This book is actually a guide. It's a guide in every chapter of the book, if you will, talks about a different level of forgiveness. And the important thing about this book is when you interact with the book, because there's questions throughout the book, when you interact with the book, be honest, but also be open to how it can change you. Because I will tell you that once you are changed, once you are healed, once you have a new level of perspective, your leadership becomes stronger. And so that is what my book seeks to do. It seeks to help you personally, but also seeks to help you as a leader, because it causes you and it gives you space to process unresolved forgiveness, even possibly from childhood, that you're still carrying, and you may not even realize you're carrying it. And so, at me as the author, of course, I'm walking right alongside of you through each chapter, through each question, through each affirmation, and through each prayer, hoping for you that once you're done with the book is that you come out and you emerge as a better leader, as a better parent, as a better friend, as a better worker, as a better human. So I'm excited about my book. It was just released last month, and so again, I'll drop it in the notes for this LinkedIn session.
Very much so. God bless you, my dear. So I want to
Thank
take
you.
the takeaways as I thank you for taking the time. It is always a delight and a pleasure to have you. I think next week will also be another bomber too, because we want to look at the emotion, the lifespan of emotions as it relates to the emotions that cause us not to want to forgive, the emotions that we experience through loss and so on, which I have looked at last week. And so the takeaway is that emotional clarity is important when we are grappling with unforgiveness. We must recognize and process our emotions without shame, is what you have said and what I am also saying. And I worked in alignment, although we did not discuss any at all. And then there's a faith side that comes to it. You must believe and reconnect with yourself, your voice, and your ambition when you have forgiven and has released those tensions. And you are also able to lean on scriptures, the Lord being close to the brokenhearted, to get you to release and to get you to reconnect with your voice, your purpose, and your vision. And then you want to create the space for rest, mentorship, and honest communication with your team so that they can also experience forgiveness. I want you to take this as your leadership challenge as you move. Who or what do you need to forgive to lead with freedom again? Because the fact is, healed leaders build healthier teams. If this conversation resonates with you, you want to remember that forgiveness isn't about hiding the truth. It's about finding the courage to let compassion and faith deepen your wisdom and guide your purpose. This is originally, it's in my book. My faith looks up. So I am saying, for those who want to continue to get your Christian tips as a leader, to lead with faith and courage and forgiveness, you want to subscribe to my newsletter. I will soon be giving the Substack link. You also want to grab your copy of My Faith Looks Up, and you want to complete your free purpose alignment audit and book your free soul sync strategy session so that you can join the purpose accelerator program that pulls you to your faith and your purpose and how you can align each for success. You can also, for those who are grappling and struggling with forgiveness, please note that there is no blood test for unforgiveness, which is actually making you sick, but there is a coach. Ronnie can assist you. So please reach out to her. And for those who want to get the courage and the faith to forgive, you reach out to me. Have a great day, everyone. And please remember that God does not expect you to lead on fumes. He wants you to lead from your overflow. So you are not just a leader, you're a vessel. God bless you all and see you next week. Thank you all for coming. I see some linking users here. I can't see your name on screen. I see you, Adinga. I see you, Simone Franklin. I see you, Lisa. I see you, Dr. Leslie. I see you, Nicholas. I see you, Sean. And I see you, Let me go in because I don't want to forget anybody. Mike, I see you. And I also see you, Paula. And I see you, Simone. Thank you so much for joining. Have a great rest of the week and a blessed Self-Care Tuesday. Bye.
Bye-bye for now.
Thank you so much.